Hello, and welcome to another episode of this speaker series where I interview published authors so students and young aspiring authors can learn more from accomplished writers. So, my name is Maidashita, and today I'm here with Dr. Shawn Dilly. He's the author of the book Schools for This Century and Beyond. So, thank you so much, Dr. Dilly, for agreeing to meet with me today, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to share. So, to start off, could you please tell me a bit about yourself and your book?
Certainly. Well, I'm currently the Director General of Emirates National Schools here in the United Arab Emirates, and I've just been here for about 2 years. The Director General, for those maybe not as familiar with that term, is basically a superintendent of schools here. So we have 6 campuses. I'm in charge of about 12,700 students. I've been basically in school administration and school leadership and in teaching as well for about, I think this is my 23rd year in education. So I've been shared many different roles and capacities as I've went through, and that's some of what has guided me towards writing this book and sharing some of the things that I've learned, as well as my doctoral work and completing that in the last few years.
So, what inspired you to write your book? Was there like anything that made you decide to write it?
One of the things I think for me, it was one of those items that I wanted to accomplish for my own goals. My doctorate was one, my PhD. And then one of the things I wanted to do was write a book as well. So it was just kind of one of those personal goals, but at the same time, it went hand in hand with my own advocacy for students. And so part of what I've wanted to accomplish with the book is to share my thoughts, my work, research, and the work that I've done with business leaders and community leaders, as well as teachers and educators, and kind of what I've learned from those years of work.
So, the audience you were hoping to reach was like educators and like business leaders, even in like not who are not in education, or
The books, I tried to write the book in non-academic language. For those in college know, especially once you get into the higher degrees, know that academic language can be somewhat difficult for some, especially novice readers or folks that may be not as familiar with the language. So I really tried to bring this down into uh, more palatable language, I should say, for everybody. But the target audience was predominantly school leaders, but that doesn't mean a parent or a student or anybody couldn't benefit from some of the things that I share in the book and are able to learn from.
and so what was the writing process for you like when you were writing your first book? And did you structure it around an outline or did you just freehand it?
No, actually, I'd actually worked with a company called Passionpreneur Publishing. And part of their process is they work with their authors and they provide a template of sorts to help guide some of the work that you're doing and create what they call a blueprint. And that was one of the things that I was struggling with when I first initially started to try to figure out how to um, determine, what should be included in the book. A lot of this I'd already sort of have collected the data, collected all of the things from my doctoral work. And so it's how do I compile this in a way that is not a 217-page dissertation? And so part of what I did was once I found this company and was able to work with them, they really kind of used this blueprint. And I'll share, they kind of share a lot of that now. The CEO of the company actually wrote a book called The Guided Author that you can now purchase, which includes a lot of this same information. And so they had sort of had a template to follow in recommendations, what you should include in chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. And so from that template, then I was able to take a lot of my information, filter it through some of the recommendations, and then ultimately complete the book.
And were they also doing the editings, or what was the editing process like? Did they give you any feedback to implement, or were they changing it for you?
Yes, there was some involvement on their end. Of course, having gone through the PhD process and learning to use tools like Grammarly and other things out there, my editing wasn't as maybe as well needed as some of the other folks. So they did go through a couple stages of editing. They do have different pathways for folks that maybe need more assistance, but for my case, I wasn't as involved as much as just making sure that some of the ideas were connected to one another, a few grammar pieces that I still missed or recommendations. And as I did find is being here in the UAE, being from the United States, you run into different recommendations and standards of English. You have the British system, you have the Australian system, and of course there's others out there, but they have different rules for periods and commas and sometimes. So that was one of the little things that I had to negotiate because the company I'm actually working or published with is out of Australia. And so, but one of the things that they did do was help navigate the uh, completing that process and work with me and accepted the US elements because that was who I knew I wanted to be the majority of my target. And I knew I was more comfortable with those rules and those approaches so that I could understand for certain what was acceptable as far as most standards for US English.
And did you consider any current events when you were writing your book, or is it more like a it'll apply to like a lot of time periods or generations?
Well, I think ultimately it's speaking to about the future of education and currently what we believe or predict to be kind of the most necessary competencies in the book. I call them future ready competencies, and most of the predictions only run through 2030. Uh, and I think those are safe predictions, and everything that I've continued to follow since that time has been pretty much continuing to reinforce the same elements that I've kind of picked up through. I can't claim credit for all of them by any means. Most of them are just compiling a lot of research and ideas from authors and editors, economists, and others. And so taking that information, that seems to still be predominantly the case. But I think with new artificial intelligence, quantum computing coming onto the table, it is difficult to say what is going to be necessary for young people. But part of what I lay out in the conclusions of the book is annual process. We need to be reevaluating if these skills and knowledge continue to be the same. And what I've found unfortunate from my career is many of these don't really have a priority in schools as far as outcomes, but yet these are being touted as the number one skills that young people need to be successful and thrive in the future workplace, or current and future, I should say. And so my advocacy is about trying to make sure that young people can have the opportunity to get those things. And those are the things that I'm trying to even do right now. And my organization right now is really help our school understand and adapt to how do we accomplish some of these things.
Mm. And how has writing your book been helpful for your career, like outside of authorship?
Well, the nice thing about a book, and this is something our publisher, I should say, talked a great deal about, was that this sort of generates credibility. You are now somewhat seen as an expert in the field. I humbly don't ever feel like I'm an expert in anything, but a lot of people do perceive you as that once you've kind of written that book and that you've done the work, because a large percentage of people out there want to write a book, but very few actually complete the process. And that's where I do recommend in finding some level of support, whether it's working with a company like I did, or taking a book like The Guided Author and walking through the steps, because most of us that do have really good ideas, but it's how do you combine those thoughts and help them translate into a readable book that has real value for the reader in the end.
And are you considering writing another book at any point?
Yes, actually, it's going to be a lot slower than probably my last one, but I am actually already started a second book. I'm going to have to spend a little more time researching the topic because I didn't have the benefit of a doctoral program to kind of help me dig through all of the research and the work around it. But I'm kind of digging into the importance and value of purpose and what that means for everyday life, but also within school leadership and the importance of purpose. And I think there's elements of that are important as far as the quiet quitting movement that I think a lot of people are committing or basically happening in the workplace, and then as well as younger generations are seeing the value, and it's even being considered by some an economic force. And so business and industry is really looking at purpose as a indicator of how important to have because young people will gravitate and talent will gravitate to that. And so people want to believe in what they're doing and that they're contributing to something. And so I think too many businesses and industries and leaders forget that as an important component. And so that's a conversation I've really started having this year with our staff and our leaders. You know, what is our purpose at the end of the day? And I have to say, it's for schools, it shouldn't be test scores and college preparedness. Uh, to me, the purpose of schools is to ensure that young people can thrive in the future. Preparing kids for society was the goal at one time, and I think the accountability movement. And you're probably not. You've lived through it. I started teaching just shy before it started in the U.S., and then was forced to be focused on a test, and I never felt that was the true responsibility of education. And I think it's accountability is important, but I think we have to reevaluate what it's done for our young people because all of the research is showing economic, social, and personal cost to young people across the globe. And so it's important we find better ways to ensure you guys are ready for the future.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely a trade-off between like trying to get good grades and then like actually learning and like focusing on trying to learn the material seriously instead of just like memorizing it for a test. So I think that's very cool that you're writing a book like that. What's a lesson you learned from writing and publishing your book? Your first book?
I think I'm gonna share some information that our publisher had shared that are kind of perfectionist and high performers out there, and we struggle because we want everything to be perfect, and we want to be really good with our book. We want it to, be everything we want. Well, if that's the case, you're never going to get complete with your book. You're never going to finish it. And so, part of our recommendation from our publisher was you just have to get it done. Get it done first. It up a little bit. Know that your first book's never going to be your second, third, or fourth book unless you finish your first one. And so that was sort of a bit of advice that I thought was kind of a different way of looking at things. And I appreciated that because that was important for somebody like myself who was concerned about, will this represent what I really think? Will it come off seeming reasonably intelligent? Sometimes we're afraid to put our ideas out there. And one of the things I would encourage your viewers to do is don't be afraid to share your ideas. There are those leaders like myself who really appreciate fresh ideas and new, and I think this is something that all leaders are going to have to learn in all sectors. We're going to have to realize that our challenges that are facing us right now and in the future are going to require a different set of solutions. And we can't keep looking at the past for those solutions. And so, what better place to look at new solutions and new ideas than young people who haven't been burdened with past experience and past challenges and understandings that sometimes shrink our standpoint or our view. And so it's important that I think young people have a voice in a lot of these things. And then also, I remember starting relatively young in my career, moving into school leadership. Often, because of my age, I was not given a fair opportunity to speak at times, even though I often had solutions or often had better ideas than what was being presented. And sometimes that was my own fault for not sharing that. So just feeling inadequate or maybe not necessarily having the confidence to share that. But I would encourage your viewers to not necessarily be afraid. Find those mentors out there that will support you and work through your ideas and work through those things. And what you end up often having is a better idea and a better complete solution than both of you could have completed individually. So encourage you to collaborate and work with peers, work with others, and just do the things that are going to be necessary because you guys are facing a lot of challenges in the future.
Thank you so much for your advice. It was such a pleasure to meet you. So
You're welcome.
hope you have a great rest of your night. And thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.